The big business of professional golf has expanded and exploded, all the while with the PGA Tour a tax-exempt corporation.
With every sponsorship and every hour volunteered, you've raised nearly $2 billion to help others.
How this could be a charity, it just seems absurd. It's really pathetic, actually.
When we give a tax exemption to the PGA Tour, the government is basically helping to fund professional golf, but it's taking services away from other segments of society.
The PGA Tour is one of several pro leagues with this status, and one U.S. senator says this should end.
What's not fair is for very profitable sports leagues to have a shelter under the tax code, which means you as a middle-income American are going to pay more taxes.
And most of the tournaments on the PGA Tour are also run as individual charities, and none is viewed favorably by a leading watchdog.
We would give every single one of these organizations a 0.
Today outside the lines, the charitable status of a lucrative professional sport.
And now, reporting for Outside the Lines, Bob Lee.
Given the sums of money in play in professional sports, the franchise values routinely now in billions of dollars, the long-term contracts often over $100 million, the growth in this entire entertainment industry, it's counterintuitive at the least, perhaps even shocking to learn that several sports leagues are legally organized as tax-exempt nonprofit corporations. The central office of the National Football League, the National Hockey League, the office of the PGA Tour all pay no taxes. In fact, in golf, beyond the PGA Tour headquarters, most of the independent PGA Tour events are also organized that way. Paula Levine examines this tax treatment in golf and considers whether indeed it will continue.
When you think of a nonprofit organization, you probably think of something like this. You probably don't think of this. But it's true. Several pro sports leagues, like the NFL and the PGA Tour, generate millions of dollars tax-free because the IRS allows those groups to operate as non-profits.
People are surprised. You know, they're amazed. What do you mean? You mean there's a place in the tax code for the PGA or the NFL to hide or not pay money? And the fact is yes.
Oklahoma Republican Senator Tom Coburn has introduced legislation in Congress that would strip the leagues of their tax-exempt status.
What's not fair is for very profitable sports leagues to have a shelter under the tax code, which means you as a middle-income American are going to pay more taxes.
When Coburn's office calculated how much tax-free revenue each sports league generated, one stood out. Because of its nonprofit status, the PGA Tour has been able to stockpile $700 million on which it hasn't had to pay taxes. And what's more, most individual tournaments are run as public charities. Together, that means lots of tax breaks to support lavish tournaments awarding millions to professional golfers.
Even if you're a sports fan, it's still concerning.
Brad Borden teaches tax law at Brooklyn Law School in New York.
When we give a tax exemption to the PGA Tour, the government is basically helping to fund professional golf, but it's taking services away from other segments of society.
Complex tax codes make it hard to say exactly how much lost tax revenue we're talking about. But tax experts estimate it could add up to $200 million over the past 20 years. And you have the tournaments themselves that are tax-exempt charities under the PGA Tour brand, with some of those also not paying sales tax.
How this could be a charity, it just seems absurd.
Government grants, other contributions.
Ken Berger is president of Charity Navigator, a nonprofit watchdog group that rates the effectiveness of various charities.
Usually 90% or more is not going to any charities. The lion's share of the money is going to big prizes, cash prizes for athletes, and all the promotion around it. So it's really pathetic, actually.
Berger says a responsible charity should spend at least 2/3 of its money on actual charity. We asked his staff to review a sampling of the PGA Tour's tournament charities.
So let me go one by one through these tournaments and ask you what sort of score you would give them. The FedEx St. Jude Classic.
0, which is our worst score. And in fact, just to save you time, we would give every single one of these organizations a 0, because the amount of money that goes into the services is less than 30%.
Outside the Lines examined the finances of all 25 U.S. tournaments on the PGA Tour that operate as charities. On average, 16% of the spending goes to charitable grants or services, far below the recommended 65%. In 2011, the charity running the FedEx St. Jude Classic in Memphis gave only 10% to St. Jude's Hospital, most of which was in the form of TV promos aired during the tournament.
At this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives.
In another case, the Shriners Hospitals for Children Open in Las Vegas, the hospital, which actually runs the tournament, lost $4.5 million over 2 years.
Are we supposed to believe that these athletes have such tremendous need for charity? This is ridiculous. There's no evidence that I can see that this couldn't be just as equally done by a for-profit that pays taxes.
Commissioner Tim Fincham and PGA Tour officials declined an on-camera interview with Outside the Lines. But spokesman Ty Votaw did answer questions by email, and to Berger's suggestion of operating as for-profits, he wrote, "The objective of a for-profit corporation is to enrich its owners. We prefer to enrich communities."
With every sponsorship and every hour volunteered, you've raised nearly $2 billion to help others.
Votaw wrote that the PGA Tour and its events donated $1.1 billion in the past 8 years alone. Consider that it took the NFL 40 years to donate just a third of that, about $368 million.
We saw more families coming to us for help.
Mike Worm directs the Boys and Girls Club of Truckee Meadows in Reno, Nevada, a region particularly hard hit by the recession.
We serve over 250,000 meals every year through this Boys and Girls Club to kids and families, and for many of our kids, it's their best maybe 1, 2, or 3 meals of the day.
In 2011, the foundation that runs the Reno Tahoe Open spent $3.5 million. It gave 3% to charity, including a $5,000 donation to the Boys and Girls Club.
Is that considered a large amount for participation in something like this?
I would say, honestly, no. It's not huge for us.
Additionally, kids from the club volunteered to pick up trash along the course.
I will tell you that it's not just the money. The other parts of the experience, exposing kids to an activity they wouldn't be exposed to, that has a high value for us.
Worm says he runs his organization as efficiently as possible, spending 80% of its money to directly help kids. Yet he won't criticize the tournament for not reaching that same standard.
It's probably better to have what we have than have nothing at all. So I would hate to have some standard that would drive them out of here. It'd be terrible to lose that event for this community.
The PGA Tour says that Charity Navigator's 65% threshold doesn't apply to PGA Tour tournament charities because they don't necessarily run charitable programs. They just raise money for them. This isn't a bake sale where there is no overhead and everything is contributed. A tournament is a major undertaking that requires significant planning, setup, and operation, all of which requires significant expense. Each tournament still gives a significant amount to charity, whether it is hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions.
As long as they're getting something at the end of the day, why does it matter that it's not meeting a certain percentage of the total?
Every single taxpayer in this country ultimately is bearing the burden of having to pay the taxes for this wildly inefficient organization that's giving so little to charity.
The PGA Tour has poured $500,000 into lobbying Congress regarding its tax exemptions since last year.
How do you think the leagues will be affected if they lose their tax-exempt status?
I don't think the leagues will be affected hardly at all. Golf will be extremely successful with or without this.
Paula Levine reporting on the advantageous tax arrangement for the PGA Tour and many of its events. Paula now joins me. Paula, there is an
undeniable jaw-drop impact here when people hear this, at least this fact that these lucrative home offices of some of these leagues are tax-exempt.
Absolutely. When I've been telling people about this story, I usually have to back up and say, wait, did you know that the NFL is a nonprofit, that the PGA Tour is a nonprofit? And without a doubt, they say, no, you're kidding me, really? And these are people who are sports fans. Many of them are in the sports industry, and they simply don't know this, even though this status has been around for decades.
What is so distinctive about the PGA Tour? Why did it capture your attention for this report?
Well, Bob, the PGA Tour stands out for a couple of reasons. One is that it really, among all the sports leagues, it really seems to take the most advantage of its tax-exempt status for its main office. It has managed to, over 20 years or so, to accumulate a savings pool of about $700 million. The second part of it is that the PGA Tour operates its tournaments as individual 501c3 nonprofit charities. And those charities, I mean, a 501c3 designation is the same thing as your Boys and Girls Club, as your local homeless shelter, and they're supposed to meet certain thresholds for charitable giving. Well, these tournament charities are really spending most of their money running a tournament and giving a very, very small percentage to charity. So that, combined with what the tour office is saving on its taxes through its tax-exempt status, is really why the PGA Tour stands out among all of the sports leagues that we took a look at.
Of course, a lot of the attention now is on the proposed legislation by Senator Coburn, who will be joining me in just a moment. But you look at Roger Goodell, National Football League commissioner, with a reported compensation package annually about $30 million. Tim Fincham published a compensation package about $5 million per annum, and they are the CEOs of tax-exempt corporations.
Right, and they rank high. They rank really high. I mean, you look at the other nonprofits in their category, and they're really at the top. And these other nonprofits may be dealing with things that we would consider more likely to be a nonprofit, helping people with insurance claims, providing other services to the public that the government wouldn't normally provide. And so it's pretty fascinating to see that so much money is going to the salaries of people, as you said, who are heading up a nonprofit, technically.
Paula Levine, thank you.
You're welcome.
You saw U.S. Senator Tom Coburn in Paula's report, and Senator Coburn now joins us outside the line. Sir, you sent the PGA a rather specific list of questions about 2 months ago. Have they answered, and what was your reaction to the response?
Well, they called our office. They would not answer via written letter. So that's essentially a non-response. Look, I'm not just picking on the PGA. We have real problems in our country, and charitable organizations, and I applaud them for what charity work they do. But to ask the American taxpayers to subsidize them to the tune of $8 or $9 million a year is ludicrous. Plus, they've accumulated a significant amount of wealth within the PGA Foundation. And they actually themselves give about $40 million a year to charity. $20 million of it's to the World Golf Hall of Fame, so half of it's for their own benefit. The fact is, and I think you in that clip showed it, is every dollar that they don't pay in what should be paid in taxes, the rest of the American people are paying.
Well, what do you make of their non-response? If they're not responding, then what's next for you?
Well, I've got a bill. I don't have a lot of co-sponsors.
You have none.
But this is something. That's right. This is something that will jive with the American people. It's about fairness. You know, how they divide up their money is really interesting. The charities get gate receipts on these tournaments, and sometimes they get promos, like in the St. Jude's Classic. But they collect the advertising and promotional monies and the TV monies that are associated with that. Now, the golfers all pay taxes, with the exception of some of the foreign golfers. They all pay taxes. We've got another little deal in there special for foreign golfers that the PGA managed to get in the tax code as well. So they pay taxes. So this isn't about the professional golfers. This is about the PGA organization using the shell to filter money and not pay taxes that they should be paying taxes on. And this won't change a thing. If we do this, this won't change a thing in terms of their ability to raise money for local charities. What it will do is take a special little earmark, tax earmark, spending earmark for the PGA out of the tax code, and the same would be for the NFL offices. Instead of the NFL teams, they all pay their taxes. So it's about being fair. It's about cleaning up our tax code and making everybody's carrying their own weight, making sure they're carrying their own weight.
You said 3 magic letters there, Senator, NFL. I would imagine there must be some lobbying going on. How large a shadow does the NFL on any given day cast on Capitol Hill and on this specific issue?
Oh, I don't know. You know, there's all these teams around, and I'm a great big sports fan. I love golf. I love watching pro football. You know, here's the other side of the story. MLB used to have this. They stopped it smartly. You can't criticize Major League Baseball because they don't do this anymore. They pay their taxes. They pay what's due, and they do a lot of charitable work as well. So hiding behind the tax code to the benefit of the people of the organization, the central organization, what this is all about, and it ought not to be that way.
This would seem to be an emotional red meat issue that a lot of folks would get behind them. My gosh, you point at these opulent, lucrative professional sports operations and point out that they, central offices at least, are tax exempt. You would think people would line up to say, me too. I'd love to sponsor or co-sponsor Tom's bill. No one has come forward, Senator. Why?
Oh, one is I haven't worked it hard. Number two is there's not, right now, there's not good tax reform going forward. You know, I would remind you, in my career in the Senate, I only had, I think, 11 people vote with me to eliminate the bridge to nowhere, right? Very few senators. A lot of them claim they did that didn't, but the fact is we busted that. We busted earmarks, and I'm out to bust earmarks in the tax code. And this is a great example where some of the wealthiest people in our country are advantaging themselves through a special carve-out in the tax code, and it just shouldn't be that way.
And to the PGA Tour's assertion that this would have a chilling effect, that their giving has gone up 30-fold in the last 35 years, that they're great contributors, and that if that special treatment is taken away, it will have a chilling effect, and we will not see that level of contribution. What's your response to that?
I don't think that's true at all. Matter of fact, they've admitted to our staff and to me that it won't affect their ability to do charitable work at all.
At this point, what do you think the prospects of this bill really getting a hard look would be?
It eventually will. The American people aren't going to tolerate this. I mean, think about it. Think about where we are. We're running hundreds of $billion deficits, $680-some billion last year, and the PGA is walking off with a benefit of $9-10 million. Some of the wealthy, I mean, go look at what we pay the head of the PGA. And look at his retirement package. I mean, go do the investigation and show this is about protecting their own little turf. And it's just another earmark in the tax code that we ought to be eliminating all across the board.
And once again, we note that we extended an invitation to the PGA Tour to participate in today's program and also in Paula's report, but they declined that opportunity, certainly on camera, and declined to be with us today. Senator Tom Coburn, I appreciate
that tells you something.
All right.
That tells you something.
All right.
The fact that they won't come out and talk about it, won't defend supposedly their charitable situation, they don't have anything to defend. They're hiding their own revenues within the tax code that has nothing to do with their charitable contributions.
From the U.S. Capitol, Senator Tom Coburn. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Good to talk to you.
For another view of this tax advantage treatment, let's now turn to Art Taylor. He is the president and the CEO of the Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Alliance. Art, what did you think of what Tom Coburn just said?
Very interesting. You know, we have a government that has serious fiscal issues, and we should be looking at every opportunity we can to generate revenue to close gaps. Although I do have to question whether we would get very much by taxing sort of the sports leagues. Most of the people who are affiliated with these entities do pay taxes, and it would be very easy if these were converted to businesses for them to eliminate any taxes that they would have to pay by distributing whatever excesses they had to the people involved in the enterprise. So I'm not so sure that the government would benefit a lot from changing these entities over to businesses. And as has been said too, there's no need for charities to worry that they would not get whatever share was coming to them if they were shifted to businesses. So I don't know.
So you don't buy the chilling effect argument from the PGA Tour? They say if we lose the status, it'll have a chilling effect, that our spending on charity has gone up 30-fold over 35 years, and if you take away this tax advantage for us, there will be a chilling effect here. You don't buy that?
It doesn't need to have a chilling effect. The bottom line is corporations give money to charity right now. And if the PGA were a corporation, it could arrange its work in such a way that it could continue to give money to charity. And I would argue that most people who go to golf tournaments aren't going with the notion that their ticket money is going to support charity. What the PGA is doing is taking some of these purchase prices for the tickets and other sponsorships that they get, and they're carving out a piece for charitable activity. And that's fine. But there's no need for it to be a charity. They could be a for-profit entity and do that just as well. But I think we're also kidding ourselves if we think the government is going to end up getting a lot more money if they were to shift over into for-profit entities.
Well, we've heard the estimate, the analysis of the bill, as Paula reported in her report, about $10 million a year if this law was indeed changed. We've got 30 seconds, Art. What realistically do you think are the chances of Senator Coburn's bill getting any traction?
I would say probably very little. I think there are other ways for people to generate money for government, and I'm sure that the government would have to look at comprehensive tax reform. There are lots of trade associations that generate lots of money. And if we were to pick on the PGA, we would have to probably look at all the other entities that are C6 organizations that generate
the NFL is
net
among them, so is the NHL, and the bill's also looking at those leagues as well. We appreciate your time. It's good to see you again, Art Taylor. Thanks for joining us outside the lines. And for much more on the question of tax exemptions for the PGA Tour and most of their tournaments, read Paula's companion piece online. You can dive deeply into the analysis of the tax-advantaged arrangements that has Charity Navigator giving the tax-exempt tournaments, all of them, a 0 by their standards. We'll be right back.